Let me hit you with a number that absolutely defies all logic. 38 minutes. That's exactly how long Aaliyah Boston played in the Indiana Fever's recent victory against the Phoenix Mercury. Now, if that number seems oddly specific, that's because it is. Because just 24 hours earlier, this exact same player, this franchise cornerstone, was listed as completely unavailable due to a lower leg injury so severe that even a single minute on the court was deemed too risky. The team's medical staff claimed it was too dangerous. The coaching staff nodded in agreement. And yet somehow when the calendar flipped to the next day and Caitlin Clark found herself suspended due to technical foul accumulation, Aaliyah Boston's mysteriously debilitating injury suddenly vanished like morning fog under the sun. Not a gradual return, not a cautious 10-minute stint to test the waters, not even a measured 20-minute appearance to ease back into game shape. No. 38 grueling, exhausting minutes of intense professional basketball against a legitimate opponent. More minutes than anyone else on the roster. More minutes than their leading scorer, Kelsey Mitchell. And this is where things start to get genuinely unsettling because this wasn't just bad timing. This wasn't just unfortunate coincidence. This was the second domino in what appears to be a highly calculated, deliberately orchestrated strategy to systematically diminish Caitlin Clark's vital importance to the Indiana Fever organization. Let's rewind to that game against the LA Sparks, the one that came before all of this unfolded. Caitlin Clark was active. She was in the lineup. She was cleared to play. But the coaching staff, in what can only be described as a bewildering display of questionable basketball logic, decided to deploy her in these incredibly strange, almost insulting 2-minute increments throughout the entire game. We're not talking about standard 5-minute rotations that you'd normally expect in professional basketball. We're not even discussing quick 3-minute stretches where a player can at least begin to find some semblance of rhythm. No, we're talking about exactly 2 minutes at a time. Anyone who has ever actually played basketball, anyone who has stepped foot on a court at any competitive level, knows that 2 minutes is barely enough time to break a sweat. It's not enough time to establish any kind of offensive flow. It's not enough time to build any defensive continuity. It's not enough time to make any meaningful impact on the game whatsoever. It's almost as if the coaching staff was deliberately trying to set her up to look ineffective, to make her performance appear subpar, to ensure that any statistics she might accumulate would look utterly meaningless in the context of the overall game. During that same Sparks game, where was Aaliyah Boston? Nowhere, completely absent. The official medical explanation was that lower leg injury, the one that supposedly was far too serious to risk testing on the court. The team's medical staff had apparently decided with complete certainty that there was no way Boston could contribute anything meaningful to that particular game. The risk was simply too high. The injury was simply too severe. So Boston sat. She watched from the sidelines.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
She rested, and the Indiana Fever, playing without their all-star center and playing their franchise player in these laughably short bursts, lost that game to the LA Sparks. They lost a team that frankly they should have dominated if they were genuinely a legitimate playoff caliber roster. But that's exactly what happened. Clark got her 2-minute appearances. Boston got her medical rest, and Indiana went down in defeat. Now jump ahead exactly 24 hours. Different game, Phoenix Mercury, and here's where the entire situation becomes absolutely impossible to ignore. Caitlin Clark is officially suspended due to technical foul accumulation. She cannot play, she's not available, she's not in the building in any meaningful capacity as a player. And suddenly, miraculously, like some kind of medical anomaly straight out of a sports medicine textbook, Aaliyah Boston's severe lower leg injury has completely and totally healed itself. Not mostly healed, not partially better, not ready for a cautious limited minutes appearance. Completely healed, completely resolved, ready for a full unrestricted punishing 38-minute workload against Phoenix. The same Phoenix Mercury team that finished last season with exactly 8 total wins. The same team that is objectively, measurably one of the worst rosters in the entire WNBA right now. And Boston didn't just play heavy minutes, she absolutely dominated. 9 of 16 from the floor, 3 of 5 from three-point range, 21 points, 9 rebounds. She was the most efficient, most impactful offensive weapon on the entire court. She was the focal point of the offense. She was their primary scoring option. She was everything that the Fever needed her to be. And here's the thing that really starts to crystallize exactly what's happening here. Kelsey Mitchell, their leading scorer, put up 29 points and 8 assists in that game. Now, 8 assists might not seem like an astronomical number on its surface, but here's the critical context. Kelsey Mitchell averaged exactly 2.1 assists per game throughout the entire previous season. She is historically, consistently, and definitionally a pure volume scorer. She is not a playmaker. She is not a facilitator. She does not operate as a primary ball distributor. And yet suddenly, in this specific game without Caitlin Clark, she's dishing out 8 assists like she's the second coming of Steve Nash. Where did those assists come from? The answer is painfully obvious. They came from having a fully healthy, fully available, fully engaged Aaliyah Boston out on the court for 38 straight minutes, constantly rolling to the basket, aggressively posting up in the paint, creating easy passing opportunities for literally everyone around her. This is the exact same Aaliyah Boston who supposedly couldn't contribute even 10 measly minutes of support to help Caitlin Clark in that Sparks game the night before. But here's where this entire situation becomes particularly insidious. Because the media, the analysts, the casual fans who don't dig deep into the actual context, they all immediately latch onto the surface-level narrative. The Indiana Fever are 4-0 without Caitlin Clark. The team is somehow magically better without their star rookie. They don't need her, they're more cohesive without her. They move the ball more freely without her. The offense flows more smoothly without her. And just like that, the narrative writes itself. The commentators start pushing it aggressively. The talking heads on social media start circulating it constantly. People start hearing it everywhere, and suddenly this completely false, completely misleading story starts becoming conventional wisdom. People start saying things like, why don't they just trade Clark? Why don't they start Ty Harris instead? Why don't they lean into life without their first overall pick? Ty Harris actually did have an excellent fourth quarter in that Phoenix game. We're being completely fair here. 15 points on 6 of 8 shooting, 3 of 4 from 3. She made big plays, she hit important shots. She contributed to the win in a legitimate way. But that strong performance is going to feed directly into the next calculated phase of this entire scheme. Because now, in addition to the "we're better without Clark" narrative, you're starting to hear whispers about whether Ty Harris should be the primary point guard instead. Whether a traditional backup ball handler is actually the better fit. Whether Clark is actually the right choice for this roster long-term. And that's exactly what this organization wants you to believe. Now let's talk about something that adds an entirely new, deeply troubling layer to this entire situation. Lexie Hull. Remember Lexie Hull, the player who consistently brings tremendous energy on both ends of the floor. The player who knocks down crucial shots. The player who plays incredibly solid lockdown defense. The player who came into this league with Caitlin Clark and has genuinely strong, undeniable chemistry with her both on and off the court. In that Phoenix game, Lexie Hull played 18 minutes. 18 minutes. A player who is clearly contributing to the team's success, who is clearly making a positive impact when she's on the court, and she gets 18 minutes of playing time. Meanwhile, Raven Johnson, who offers significantly less on the offensive end and significantly less spacing, somehow gets 23 full minutes. Why? What is the legitimate basketball justification? What is the actual rationale for severely limiting the minutes of a player who is so clearly contributing to the team's success? Well, here's a theory that makes way too much sense to safely ignore. Lexie Hull is incredibly close with Caitlin Clark. The two of them have genuine chemistry. They trust each other implicitly. They play off each other seamlessly. And when an organization actively wants to build a false narrative that the team is somehow fundamentally better without Clark, the strategy becomes obvious. You start limiting the playing time of the players who have the strongest connection to her. You disrupt those natural court relationships. You systematically make it harder for her to succeed and find rhythm when she finally does return. Let's pivot now and really examine Stephanie White's coaching decisions during that Phoenix game, because even when the Fever were actually winning, she was making baffling strategic choices that should have cost them the game. Indiana went on a massive 13-0 run in the third quarter. A 13-0 run, pure momentum shift, pure dominance, and you want to know exactly why that happened. They switched to a box and one zone defense specifically focused on shutting down Alyssa Thomas, Phoenix's primary offensive weapon. And it worked perfectly. The Mercury couldn't adjust on the fly. They couldn't figure it out. Indiana seized complete control of the game. The lead was theirs. The momentum was theirs. Everything was working perfectly. So what does Stephanie White do immediately after this brilliant defensive adjustment sparks a massive run and finally gives her struggling team the lead? She completely abandons it. She pulls her team out of that zone and goes right back to standard man-to-man defense. She essentially opens the door and invites Phoenix right back into the game. There is absolutely zero sound basketball logic to that decision. When you find something that works that dramatically, when you find a defensive scheme that creates that much chaos for your opponent, you ride it. You stay with it. You let the other team prove they can counter it before you voluntarily abandon it. But White actively chose to pull back from success. And as a direct result, Phoenix found their rhythm again and started scoring at will. And then there's the absolutely baffling fourth quarter offensive strategy, which somehow manages to be even worse than the defensive miscues. Aaliyah Boston had been absolutely dominating down in the paint all game long. 9 of 16 shooting, incredibly efficient, getting whatever she wanted in the post. The single most efficient offensive weapon the Fever had going. So what does the coaching staff do in the crucial final quarter? They completely take her out of the paint. They have their dominant center camping out at the three-point line, standing aimlessly at the top of the key, setting weak screens 25 feet away from the basket instead of posting up where she's been devastatingly effective all game long. It's not until the absolute final minute, when Indiana desperately needs a guaranteed bucket to survive, that White finally calls Boston's number in the post again. And guess what happens immediately? Easy bucket, game-sealing play. The exact type of offensive action that should have been the primary strategy for the entire fourth quarter. Think about that for a second. Why would any logical coach actively choose to take their most dominant, most efficient scorer completely out of their natural comfort zone during the most critical, highest pressure moments of the entire game? The answer, if you're actually paying attention to the established pattern here, is that Stephanie White was actively trying to make this game so much closer than it ever needed to be. She was artificially trying to create unnecessary late-game drama specifically to make it look like a massive uphill struggle. She was setting up this perfect narrative scenario where if Indiana somehow lost, it would reinforce that they need more than just not having Clark to win. And if they somehow manage to win despite her highly questionable coaching, well, that's even better for the narrative. Then they get to say, look how resilient this team is without Clark. Look how they can overcome adversity. Except they were playing the 8th worst team in the entire league. They shouldn't have needed any adversity to overcome. They should have been blowing out Phoenix by 20 points. Because here's the absolute critical truth that gets completely buried in all the noise. The Phoenix Mercury are not a good basketball team. They are objectively one of the worst rosters in the entire WNBA right now. They finished last season with 8 total wins. 8, for context, that's a 34-game season in the WNBA, which means they won roughly 23% of their games. This is not a championship contender. This is not even a playoff caliber team. This is a legitimately struggling basketball team. And the Indiana Fever, playing with their full complement of healthy players, needed massive clutch fourth-quarter shots from both Kelsey Mitchell and Ty Harris just to barely escape with a 3-point victory against this historically bad team on their own home court. They won 92-89, a 3-point game against one of the worst rosters in professional basketball. If Indiana were genuinely as dominant and well-oiled without Clark as the narrative suggests, they should have demolished Phoenix. They should have won by 15, 20, 30 points. They should have put them away early. Instead, they struggled. They needed heroic clutch performances, and they barely squeaked out a win that they had absolutely no business needing to fight for. Now let's really think about what Caitlin Clark could have done with a healthy Aaliyah Boston by her side in that LA Sparks game. Think about the lethal pick-and-roll combinations they could have run together. Think about the defensive attention that would have been split between 2 all-star caliber players. Think about the floor spacing that would naturally open up for everyone on the court. Think about the easy passing opportunities Boston's presence in the paint would have created. Instead of getting any of that, Clark got insulting 2-minute cameos. She got forced to play with a lineup that looked like a struggling G League rotation. She got set up to fail from the moment the game started. And that loss, that completely avoidable defeat that became part of the narrative, that became evidence that they're better without her. Here's what genuinely should concern every single actual Fever fan. This toxic strategy might actually work in the short term. They might convince some casual observers that Indiana is somehow magically better without their franchise player. They might win a few more games during this suspension period and really cement that anti-Clark narrative. But what happens when the playoffs arrive? What happens when they face truly elite, championship-level competition and desperately need their best, most talented players performing at their absolute highest potential? You cannot spend an entire regular season undermining your primary star player and then expect to flip a switch in the postseason and suddenly have perfect chemistry, deep trust, and unbreakable bonds. That's not how basketball works. That's not how human psychology works. That's not how anything works. And beyond that, think about what this does to Caitlin Clark's development as a professional basketball player. She's a rookie. She's supposed to be learning the nuances of professional basketball. She's supposed to be steadily growing her skill set. She's supposed to be building confidence and understanding how to dominate at this level. Instead, she's being jerked around with wildly inconsistent minutes, constantly shifting lineups, and a coaching staff that seems more interested in controlling narratives than actually developing her. That's not how you build a generational franchise cornerstone. That's exactly how you create deep-seated dysfunction and resentment in a locker room. The truly frustrating part is that this current Fever roster actually has genuine high-level talent. Kelsey Mitchell is a legitimate proven scorer. Aaliyah Boston is a bona fide all-star. Lexie Hull brings tremendous energy in shooting. Ty Harris just proved she can make huge clutch plays. Add Caitlin Clark's elite playmaking and historic scoring ability to that mix, and you have the foundation of a really scary, really good basketball team. But you have to actually want to build that team. You have to fully commit to making it work. Right now, it feels like the Indiana Fever organization is vastly more interested in proving some petty internal point than they are in actually winning basketball games. They seem far more interested in controlling the media narrative than they are in maximizing Clark's incredible game-changing impact. Here's what needs to happen next. Watch the Vegas game, watch it closely. Because Caitlin Clark is coming back to play against the defending champion Las Vegas Aces, a team led by MVP A'ja Wilson, arguably the single best player in the entire WNBA. This is where the truth will reveal itself. If Aaliyah Boston suddenly comes down with yet another highly mysterious injury that conveniently limits her availability when Clark is back on the court, then you'll know. If the coaching rotation immediately reverts back to those bizarre 2-minute increments, if Lexie Hull's minutes get cut again, if the offensive system suddenly doesn't maximize Clark's abilities, then you'll know for certain. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't poor timing. This was the calculated plan all along. Because here's the raw truth of the matter. This organization had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They had a generational talent literally fall into their lap through the draft. Caitlin Clark single-handedly brought unprecedented national attention to the Indiana Fever. Ticket sales skyrocketed, merchandise flew off shelves, primetime national broadcasts suddenly featured Indiana games. Millions of casual fans who had never watched the WNBA suddenly knew exactly who the Fever were entirely because of her. That's not hyperbole. That's documented financial fact. The economic impact of having a superstar like Clark on your roster is totally measurable and absolutely significant to the bottom line. And yet, despite all that massive financial success, the organization seems bizarrely and aggressively determined to constantly undermine her. They seem desperate to create scenarios where she looks bad, just to build false narratives that minimize her importance. Why would any sane organization sabotage their own franchise-altering financial investment? The only logical explanation is that there are specific highly influential people within the organization who fundamentally resent the national attention Clark has received. These are people who likely feel threatened by her superstar popularity. These are people who desperately want to prove that their precious team was fine before she arrived and will be fine without her. But that's incredibly dangerous, deeply flawed short-term thinking that ignores catastrophic long-term consequences. Because think about what happens when Clark's rookie contract expires and she becomes a free agent. What happens when a smarter franchise comes along and offers her a better situation? A situation with better coaching, better organizational support, a front office that actually appreciates her. You'll have spent years telling absolutely everyone that she's not that important to your team's core identity. So why would she ever feel loyalty to stay? The smarter play, the proven playbook that actually builds sustainable long-term winning culture, is to maximize your generational star's unique strengths from day one. Build your entire offensive and defensive system around what she does best. Put her in prime positions to constantly succeed and shine. Surround her with complementary role players who enhance her style of game. Look around the league. The Dallas Wings built around Eric Ogunbowale. The Las Vegas Aces built around A'ja Wilson. That's how actual championship contenders are constructed. Indiana is doing the literal opposite. They're playing their franchise star in useless 2-minute increments. They're sitting their highly productive second-best player with mysterious injuries exactly when their rookie is on the court, then miraculously playing her 38 minutes when Clark is suspended. They're limiting the crucial minutes of role players who have proven on-court chemistry with her. They're running archaic offensive sets that don't even attempt to maximize her elite playmaking and passing abilities. And then they're acting completely shocked when the media narrative becomes that the team is better without her. Let me be absolutely clear. This isn't accidental. This isn't bad luck. This isn't unfortunate timing. This is a highly coordinated, incredibly deliberate internal effort to aggressively diminish Caitlin Clark's vital role and importance to this franchise. And the evidence is sitting right there in plain sight. It's written all over the nightly box scores. It's blatantly obvious in the highly questionable coaching rotation decisions. It's practically screaming at us in the absurd way that Aaliyah Boston's supposedly severe leg injury magically disappeared the exact moment Clark was officially suspended. This is the kind of situation that will absolutely determine the long-term trajectory of this entire organization. If Stephanie White and the front office continue down this path, if they keep sabotaging their own franchise player, if they keep building false narratives that minimize Clark's importance, then they're making a monumental strategic error. Because here's what's actually going to happen. Caitlin Clark is going to eventually realize what's happening. She's going to see the pattern. She's going to understand that this organization doesn't actually want her to succeed. She's going to recognize that they're more interested in protecting their egos and proving a point than they are in building a championship contender. And when her rookie contract expires and she has options, when other franchises come calling with genuine appreciation and better situations, she's going to leave. And the Indiana Fever organization will have spent years actively pushing away the generational talent that brought unprecedented attention and financial success to their franchise. They will have squandered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They will have proven to the entire basketball world exactly what kind of organization they really are. And that's a legacy that doesn't recover quickly. That's a reputation that doesn't repair easily. The choice is completely theirs to make. But based on exactly what we've clearly seen over these past few deeply revealing games, the pattern is undeniable. The evidence is overwhelming. And unless something truly massive and completely structural changes dramatically within that front office and across that entire coaching staff, this whole situation is inevitably going to end incredibly badly for absolutely everyone involved. Because here's the absolute ultimate truth. Caitlin Clark absolutely does not need the Indiana Fever to be a massive success in this world. The Indiana Fever desperately, entirely, completely need Caitlin Clark. And the sooner that stubborn organization finally swallows their pride and figures that crucial fact out, the vastly better chance they actually have of building a legitimate long-term championship contender, instead of remaining a deeply dysfunctional mess that tragically wastes a once-in-a-generation talent. The choice is completely theirs. But we're all going to be watching to see what they actually decide to do.